Well, I'm Carlos Tanner. I played basketball for Jim Hill from 9th through 12th grade, from fall of '95 through spring of '99. And now I'm a lawyer in Jackson. I practice law here, and I've been back in Jackson since about 2007.
What years did you play basketball at Jim Hill High School?
I played basketball at Jim Hill High School. I was a point guard in between 1996 and 1999. In 1996, I was point guard on the 9th grade team, and then 97 through 99, I was point guard on the varsity team at Jim Hill. I played with Trey Sanders, who was a dandy dozen my last 2 years in 98, 99. Roy Dixon, when I was in the 9th grade, Roy Dixon was a senior. He was a dandy dozen in all-state selection. Played with Rod Beecham, who was not a dandy dozen, but he was a fantastic point guard. He was all-state honorable mention, but that's who I came up behind: Rod Beecham, Reggie Smith, those guys. Oh, and of course, I can't forget to mention my classmate and teammate, Trey Sanders.
Talk to me about the legendary coach Fred Harris.
Fred Harris was a legendary coach in JPS, and one of the things that I recall about Coach Harris, my senior year, I was designated the star student at Jim Hill. That's a designation that they give out to all the schools in Mississippi for the person who scores the highest in the school on the ACT exam. And along with the star student designation, each star student gets to name a star teacher. And I remember that year, after getting named star student, even though I was in the IB program and had a lot of great teachers in IB, I was very close with the people that were in administration. I named Coach Harris as the star teacher that year. And years later, after I had gone off and finished college, unfortunately, Coach Harris met his untimely demise, and me and everybody who had come through Jim Hill, who was around at that time, and even some people came back from out of state, and that was in his obituary. And I knew that it meant a lot to him that he had been named star teacher. And Coach Harris was a whole lot more to us over at Jim Hill than just a basketball coach. He was like a father figure to a lot of guys. And even outside of, I can tell you a lot about what it was like to play for Coach Harris. He taught us a lot of principles about that I still use to this day, about hard work, about discipline, about how to win with class, lose with grace, and how to be a fighter. A lot of times during my time at Jim Hill, one of the things about our teams was that, we didn't have a lot of tall guys. We were short and scrappy. And, Coach Harris, really preached to us hard work and what it was like to see how he built cohesive teams. I mean, guys who played for Coach Harris, we're friends to this day. We've been to parents' funerals of each other. We've been to, sent flowers to hospitals for, births of children, that kind of thing. We're each other's godfathers to each other's children. And that's the kind of thing that Coach Harris instilled in us. And if you don't mind, I'd like to, aside from me playing and being associated with Coach Fred Harris's teams, there was something that I thought was special, not just about being a Jim Hill Tiger in the late 90s. I think there's a bigger issue that I observe about JPS, Jackson Public Schools basketball as a whole. It's easy, and I've seen reports to talk about all the wins that Coach Wayne Brent from Provine had, all the championships he won. I can talk about Coach Arthur Brown from Murrah and all the wins he had, the successful players he had come through his program. I can talk easily about Coach Billups, Thomas Billups from Lanier. And you can look at old newspaper clippings and see those accolades. What you're not gonna see, that's probably, more to their credit, how many guys came through Lanier that Coach Billups helped keep off the streets? How many guys came through Provine out of West Jackson that Coach Brent made sure had counseling on issues that had nothing to do with bouncing a ball up the court. I know firsthand how many guys, owe their very being here right now, living successful lives, not succumbing to a lot of the pressures that were going on in and around Jim Hill and West Jackson, to Coach Harris, stepping up, being a father figure for a lot of guys. And I think those are the kinds of things that people aren't going to notice. It's easy to just talk about wins on a basketball court, but that's the kind of stuff, that get guys like Coach Harris into heaven,
Carlos, we talked about, Coach Harris, and he was a mentor to me during that time.
Yes, sir.
And he not only meant a lot to the basketball team, but he meant a lot to the whole school. Mm-hmm. And as an attorney, I remember some of the things that you can kind of, the toughness that you had to have on a Coach Harris team. I know because he told me, Coach Harris said, John, we'll come through the door, that's where I'm going to coach. Mm-hmm. Look, we're going to coach them up and we're going to go out there and we're going to compete. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you didn't have a bunch of tall guys, but you had guys that are ready to fight when they hit the court. Mm-hmm. So kind of talk to me about that attitude and how it's paid off into what you're doing now.
Coach Harris, he used to always stress. He would joke with us. It didn't matter who you were, whether you were the dandy dozen star shooting guard or the guy pushing the broom before cleaning up the court before we started. He would say, I didn't ask any of y'all to come here. He was like, I played the hand I'm dealt. And what that spoke to me, even back in those days, is the kind of ethics that Coach Harris had. He wasn't gonna color outside the lines. He didn't care who lived at what residence, and was playing elsewhere. He wanted to play with those that were at our school and wanted to play on the team, and were gonna do what he demanded of us. And so that kind of ethics, having your own personal constitution and not breaking it or bending it for anybody. That's what I carry with me to this day. One of the funny things about lawyers is people assume, if you got a successful track record being a lawyer, that you must be a good liar. But I teach law school classes now. I lecture around the state, outside the state. And to defeat that notion, a lot of times I tell people I've gotten a whole lot farther with juries, with prosecutors, when I've been on the defense side. And when I was a prosecutor, I get a lot further telling people the truth and putting stuff in context than I ever would off a lie. And so it was the way Coach Harris carried himself. And then I feel like he and I had a real special relationship at the time. Early on, of course, naturally we talked a lot about basketball and what my job was on the court and what my job was in relation to the teammates I had. But the thing about Coach Harris is he knew what my primary path to success was. He talked to me more about academics and achievement in the classroom and enrichment activities. He's the one that encouraged me to go off to Duke for academic camp after my sophomore year rather than a basketball camp that I had been invited to participate in. So it was that kind of thing about Coach Harris and his priorities and, making sure the first thing was first, so to speak, that really stuck with me.
Oh my God. How does what you do as an attorney, are any of those skills related from being a point guard for so many years? I know, and if I remember right, you didn't shoot a lot of balls.
That's true.
You didn't score a lot of points.
Right.
But your job was to set everybody else up.
Yeah, well, the thing about my, I think it definitely relates. First and foremost, it doesn't matter who scores the most points. Point guard, like a quarterback in football, you're a leader. The position is built around leadership. You're setting a tone each and every time up and down the floor, and you're directing everybody. You might be able to shoot better than me, but I'm putting you in the spots that you need to get to be able to shoot your most effective shots. It's about clock management. It's about playing good defense, making sure you're a floor general. And that's what I've tried to be in my legal career. Those things, it's about systems, understanding, everybody's role and making sure everybody stays within their lanes. Even though I'm the point guard, I got to know that my four-man, he's not the shooter, but he's got to be in the position to get rebounds. So I might direct the floor based on that. And so that's a lot of what I do here. I mean, you got to know what plays to run and what situations. So in my role as a lawyer, and especially as a person that operates my own practice, the big thing is having systems in place. I mean, and anybody who was ever an athlete or a coach knows, I mean, for every hour on the court, that's days and weeks of practice. And that's a similar thing. I mean, I'm really known for being a good courtroom lawyer. And so people see the courtroom stuff, but they don't know it's a whole lot of reading, a whole lot of all-nighters that go into, you know, the 1 hour of success in the courtroom. So, I mean, it's a lot of that kind of stuff that was planted in me early, particularly during my time at Jim Hill.
Talk to me about some of the competitors or best players you played against in Jackson during that time, and also some of the best teams that you played against during that time.
Well, you know, it was interesting. My senior year, we ended up at the Big House, and you know, for the state playoffs, and we were 2 games out from the championship game. And you know, one of the comments that we would get was our record, because I think by the time we got to the State Coliseum, we were 20-12, which was not like most of the other folks that were down there. The problem is, again, going back to the point about JPS basketball, 8 of those 12 losses were to Provine and Lanier. And so, you know, those guys were tough, you know. And if you look at the Dandy Dozen, I remember my last 2 years at Jim Hill, I think probably, I mean, you got the whole state of Mississippi, 84 counties, but or 82 counties or whatever it is, but half of the Dandy Dozen were right here in JPS. I mean, Provine had an amazing squad. Lanier, I mean, you know, they were a powerhouse. And that year, even though we made it to the state, those were the 2 teams that ended up in the state championship. And I remember those guys well. It was funny because in high school at Provine, you had Kamari Ballard. That were my year. You had Kamari Ballard and Otis Gaines. And they were competitive on their own team, but we were competitive vis-a-vis each other. The same with Lanier. They had a point guard, real short like me, real tough, real strong guy, and had a somewhat similar game. He was quick as a cat, didn't shoot much, but he was definitely a floor general, and that was Cornelius Torrance. And it's funny, back in those days, you know, we bump into each other out at the mall, at parties, kind of give each other the side eye. But again, the thing about this kind of a fraternity that JPS basketball represents, we didn't speak much in high school because we had all these competitive battles, but years and years later, we've become friends. Kamari Ballard's doing positive stuff in the community. He has a team that he's using, kind of like the same thing I was saying about Coach Brown, Coach Billups, Coach Brent, Coach Harris. You know, he's using the vehicle of a basketball training operation to mentor kids, to keep kids in a positive lane. You know, I barely talked to the man in high school, but he sent me a letter. I went to the mailbox one day, my P.O. box, opened it up. There was a letter in there asking me to support his team. I sent a check in. We weren't friends in high school. We were fierce competitors, but I was happy to support the man. And the ladies the same way. You know, look at Tamika Reed. I wasn't particularly close to Tamika Reed in high school. We were the same year. I was at Jim Hill, she was at Murrah. But her first year at Jackson State, I saw how she was like, I mean, I was proud to see how much she was kicking tail, so to speak. I hopped in her inbox and sent her a message to her saying, hey, it's the end of the year. I'm looking at charitable donations. If your girls' ball team needs a donation, I'm happy to support. And I think you look at what's going on at Jackson State right here in this community, I don't think it's an accident that another one of my competitive people who also played point guard at Murrah, Ashley Robinson is the AD over there. I don't think it's an accident that you know, awesome Tamika Reed and newly Mo Williams have been brought over there. I mean, all 3 of them were, you know, superstar basketball players in JPS, and now you look, I mean, 25, 30 years plus, everybody's working together. I mean, you know, that's the kind of support. Richard Bradley played for Murrah. We've been doing business together for years. And I think it's important to say that in my legal career, I think, you know, other than the stuff I said that Coach Harris kind of instilled in me, nobody had a direct boost to my legal career like Judge Henry Wingate. And one of the first things we bonded over was the fact that I was a point guard at Jim Hill, and he had been back in the day, before I was living, an awesome point guard at Brinkley back when it was a high school. So, you know, and I understand from him that he and Coach Brown, who was coaching back when I was in high school, used to have legendary battles. Now, I'm sure Coach Brown would say something different about who used to come out on top, but, you know, one of the first things Judge Wingate and I bonded over was the fact that we were both point guards in JPS.